So about 2 years ago, the U.S. did a failed coup attempt in Bolivia, and it was so clownish and ham-handed. But so they, as always, was they claimed that the election was rigged. Absolutely no proof behind it. The Organization for American States, or the Organization of American States, which is supposed to be this international independent agency that monitors elections. Um, they put out this bullshit. They put out this report, and like in one line of it, they said that there were irregularities in some of the polling locations, and because of that, it calls into question the entire election. Um, so the irregularities weren't really irregularities. From what I understand from the interviews I've seen with people familiar about the topic, it's in more rural areas. They have two counts. I'm not going to get into too much detail with their election process. They have two counts, and for the rural areas in Bolivia, one of the counts were coming in slower, and then all of a sudden, a lot of them started rolling in at the same time. And like I said, a lot of it just came down to the fact that it was rural areas and it was harder to update the numbers as they were going. But OAS put out that bullshit report. Then all the mainstream media outlets, Western media outlets, they ran with it, and they were pretending like Evo Morales, who was the first indigenous president of Bolivia, the most popular politician, most popular president in the history of Bolivia. They were trying to act like he stole the election, and everybody was just repeating that uncritically, manufacturing consent like the media does. So they whipped everybody up in a frenzy. Oh my God, they're this undermining democracy. They're stealing the election. Evo Morales is a dictator. All this stuff, and they were given an opening to their collaborators on the ground. Many people in the military, many people in the police. There were also right-wing politicians who wanted to overthrow Evo Morales, and apparently it was mainly to allow Western mineral companies access to Bolivia's lithium reserves, which, of course, that's what it all comes down to: stealing some country's natural resources. Bolivia has the largest lithium reserves on the planet, and lithium is used for all kinds of things like making batteries and different kind of technologies and things like that. So, like I said, the collaborators in Bolivia, and by the way, the Organization of American States, as you guys probably already know, funded by the State Department, and is basically like a State Department CIA cutout, and we use them to, like I said, manufacture consent, call into questions elections when we want to overthrow governments around the world. That's what they did in Bolivia. Then the right-wing collaborators, who also have ties to the U.S. and to the CIA, many of them went to the School of Americas. I think that's what it's called. The same school that Juan Guaido went to, and other people who have gone from this military base, this school or whatever, in the United States. I believe it's in Florida. And a lot of foreign leaders around the world come to the school, and coincidentally, when they go back to their home countries, they usually are at the center of some sort of dust up and regime change effort to overthrow the government there on behalf of U.S. interests. So many of the people in the military who were behind this coup, and people in the police, had ties to the School of Americas. Then one day, they just went buck wild, and the police and the military were doing riots all over the street. They were going after members of Evo Morales' political party, arresting them, beating the shit out of them. I think some of them were even assassinated, and they gave Evo Morales the ultimatum. They said either you leave the country, or you step down, you resign, or we keep doing this, and we're going to go after all your political allies and things like that. Evo Morales left the country, and then Janine Áñez, who was basically just like some rando congressperson, I guess you can say, in Bolivia. She was not in the line of secession. Line of secession being so Evo Morales is the president. If anything happens to him, if he resigns, then it's supposed to go to his vice president. If it doesn't go to that, I think it goes to the president of the Senate, and then after that is like the chief justice or something like that. So there's a line of secession. Nowhere in that line of secession is Janine Áñez. But after Evo Morales stepped down, she just out of nowhere declares herself the interim president. And then I guess this was all according to plan. And then everybody else started going with it, similar to like what we were doing with Juan Guaido and pretending just because this person says they're the president, now they're officially the president. Janine Áñez was doing that. So after the coup, she was the one who took charge of the country. And then after she was president, she directed the military, directed the police, as always with these type of U.S.-backed regime change efforts, to do massacres in the streets of protesters, of dissidents who were against the coup, mainly indigenous people. So she sicked their U.S.-backed death squads on the civilians, on the indigenous civilians in Bolivia, and it was horrible. And of course, one of the first order of business was the lithium reserves that were under the control of the Bolivian government. They signed some type of contract that Evo Morales originally denied, and this contract would have allowed Western oil company, Western corporations access to the minerals, to the lithium reserves. So again, I mean, it was a textbook U.S. CIA State Department coup regime change to steal natural resources. And so it was looking bad for a while, and then there were elections, and Evo Morales' I believe it was his vice president, but somebody in his party won the election and ran out the coup mongers. But the story gets even better, because it wasn't like here in the U.S. where you have these war criminals and these just flat out criminals running the government, and then they just leave and, you know, act like nothing ever happened. They said the people who took the Socialist Party in Bolivia, when they took control of the government, they arrested all the coup mongers and all the collaborators, and they're being charged with crimes. So I support that. If this world made any kind of sense, the people here in the U.S., in the State Department, the White House, CIA, whoever was involved in facilitating this coup and this regime change, they should also be being prosecuted, because it's against international law. It's against our own laws to overthrow another country like that. So I think that was a great thing. Like I said at the time, that was a real win, because that was a real win for the left in Bolivia, and as opposed to here in the United States, where the left just doesn't ever really get big major wins like that. And I want people to really take in how big of a deal that is. Like the U.S., as we've done dozens of times over around the world, tried to install a brutal dictator to do with doing disappearances and murders and assassinations and all this stuff, violently overthrowing the government. We tried to do another one of those coups, and the people in Bolivia were not having that shit. And they ran the coup mongers out. That by itself is a win. And now they're prosecuting them, and they're in prison. So that's a real win. They won back their country from the right-wing imperialists and coup mongers and collaborators and traitors. That's a big win. That's some shit that you get a national holiday and everybody's celebrating every year to the end of time. Like, that's a big win. And compared to here in the United States, like, what do we consider wins? Like, what are the big wins that the left has? Oh, Bernie Sanders talked about Medicare for all, and he made more people like it. That's not a win. If he passed Medicare for all, that would be a win. If he got rid of student loan debt, whether through the Senate or pressuring the president, and he accomplished that, that would be a big win. But here in the U.S., again, no major wins anywhere in sight for the last however many decades, and people are just so desperate that they grasp for anything to call it a win. But this is a win, and I want this to be an example of an actual win. But so the story is even more. It takes a turn because Antony Blinken, Joe Biden's warmongering Secretary of State, put out a statement on Twitter about Jeanine Áñez and the rest of them being locked up in prison, and it basically saying, "Oh yeah, we're concerned about the democracy in Bolivia. We're concerned about the legal system being used for political grievances and things like that, and we demand that all the former members, the former officials, be released." The hypocrisy there, of course, is off the charts. We were the ones who were undermining democracy in Bolivia. We were the ones who helped do a coup, a violent coup, and regime change in their country, and to overrule the results of an election because somebody won the election who wasn't going to allow Western corporations to get access to the lithium reserves. That person won, and because you didn't like it, you tried to install a new government. So we were the ones undermining democracy there. And look how they just flipped the script. Up is down, black is white, and when they actually restore democracy in the country, when the public actually chooses their government and chooses their leader again, the U.S. is going to clutch their pearls and cry foul and act like it's the other way around. So that's ridiculous. But it's worth noting, it's worth paying attention because so how far are we going to go to get those collaborators, those coup mongers, released in Bolivia? Because it seems like we're committed to getting those collaborators out of the country, similar to like how it was with the people who supported Batista in Cuba, or the dictatorship in Cuba, and after Fidel Castro took control of the country, those people will run out of the country, and those are the people who were working closely with the U.S. government. So we gave them all asylum. We allowed them all to come to the country, no problem. And also some of the people who stayed behind and were helping, trying to overthrow the Castro government for decades. Those people were when they were run out of the country, we also allowed them into the country. So it looks like they're trying to secure that same sort of a deal for Jeanine Áñez and the rest of the coup mongers and traitors and collaborators in Bolivia. But I don't see the Socialist Party releasing them just because the U.S. tells them to. I see them following through with these prosecutions, and I see them being in prison for a very long time. So are we going to do some type of covert CIA action to get them out? Or are we going to impose brutal sanctions and claim that this is some sort of authoritarian dictatorship like we do all over the world, and justify these horrific sanctions that bring the economy to a halt, cripple the entire national economy? We've seen the results of sanctions in Syria and in Iran and elsewhere around the world, Venezuela, where we're imposing these sanctions, Yemen, and not allowing food into the country, not allowing medicine into the country. There are fuel shortages, and it is like one long emergency for the people in these countries under our sanctions. So are we going to go that route with Bolivia? Are we going to do some sort of overt regime change to throw out the government. I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know how committed the Biden administration is going to be. Again, this is about the largest lithium reserves on the planet, so there is no legs that I don't put anything past them, is what I'm saying. So this is good news that Ginny Nunez and the rest of them are in prison, and let's just see what happens next.